Excellent suggestion. Thank you very much for suggesting it. You can see Somerset there marked on the map. So let's have a closer look at northwest Somerset for some Roman style stuff. Here we are in the southwest of England. You've got southern Wales, you've got the Bristol Channel, and then you've got running along that coast, largely northwest Somerset, or northern Somerset. What were the Romans doing here exactly? Well, they moved down this way by about AD 55, because that's when Legio to Augusta, the Second Augustan Legion, had set up a legionary fort at Exeter, which you can just see around there. And they were led by the general Vespasian, who later became emperor. Rome was here for a number of different reasons, but largely because of what was in the ground. There's a lot of mineral wealth here, so going down towards Cornwall, you've got tin, but you've got lead and you've got silver here as well, and the Romans were very keen to get that. And just to give you an anecdote, in the southeast of England, there were huge amounts of iron deposits. The Romans went to town on these, and apparently they left large amounts of spoil from their processing of the iron ore. And I was at a talk where it was told that this was used when they created or started creating more roads in southern England in the 1960s. So they were building new roads, and they had all this sort of material that they could reuse, that the Romans had actually got out of the ground. So there we go. So we've kind of technically got Roman roads that we're driving cars on in southern or southeastern England. Anyway, let's get back then to some of the areas that you've mentioned in northwest Somerset. Let's start with Bridgewater. So apparently there was a Roman fort there, and it was on a meander of the River Parrett, which hasn't been found at Bordrip. Apparently there's something there, though I've been unable to find anything specifically, but that's apparently what was there. And it makes sense in a way, because to the northeast, you've got something very big going on. Now, I haven't been able to get a full photo of it, but you can see Charterhouse. That's Charterhouse. Charterhouse was a lot of lead and silver mines. The Romans set up a fort there. They had an amphitheatre for the soldiers there. They were monitoring all the digging that was going on, because there was a key amount of material to get out of the ground there. So that was really important. At Brent Knoll, apparently there's a Roman temple, or was a Roman temple. And then just above my head, which pretty much is everything these days, is Shapwick. And you can see that there's an anvil icon there. And that's the Shapwick hoard. And there are around 9,000 coins found in 1998 there. And these included coins dating as far back as 31 BC through to AD 224. And the earliest ones apparently included quite a few coins of Mark Antony. So there we go. Bit of trivia for you about the coins ending up in Roman Britain. Coins are fantastic. They tell us so much. I went on a coin handling course a few weeks ago with Brighton and Hove Archaeological Society. Had a great time at a workshop there. Got to look at some really interesting coins. Anyway, there's other things going on here as well. You can probably make out that there's a Roman road, that red line, which then goes into a dash. The dash part is where we think the Roman road is going, but it hasn't been excavated yet. So it's sort of a speculation of the course of that road. You've got those sort of triangles. The empty ones are where there's something that's been found at an important building. The one that's black or black filled in is at Stawell. That's actually a villa, so there's a Romano-British villa at Stawell. But I want to now go westwards, because there's a few more military camps or forts there that are worth having a chat about. And we'll actually start with that one at Norton Fitzwarren, the red one with a diagonal line through it. Let's start with that. Above my head, we have Norton Fitzwarren. That was a temporary marching camp, so it wouldn't have been there very long. It was just used there perhaps for a couple of days, overnight, whatever. But then you have more permanent ones, and you can see these with the red squares. So you've got one at Wivelscombe, which was an auxiliary in the middle of the 1st century AD, and that would have been occupied by auxiliary soldiers. You had one at Rainsbury, where there was apparently 3 to 4 centuries of men there. It's worth mentioning that the Roman army, due to its nature and the way it was structured, they were very good at being able to get detachments from the main legion out and about. And that was because you had subdivisions of big units. So you had the legion, you had the cohorts, 480 men, you had centuries, 80 men, and you had contubernia, 8 men. So what you could do is detach smaller units from this that would have been consistent. They would have fought with each other, they knew each other, and just move them around and make sure that they could act almost as a sort of overseeing police force, that kind of a thing. Make sure that things were going as they should do. It was a very effective way of being able to project and maintain force in a region, because you didn't just have to have one block of lots of men. You could send smaller detachments out. And then what we have here is at Cudmore Farm, there seems to be a fort. Now, I can't find much of a reference to it, apart from some photos that were taken, aerial photos. And these are really, really good because from high up, you can actually make out things in far more detail than if you're walking around at ground level. Squares, as a general rule, 90-degree angles don't occur on topography from above naturally. So you think to yourself, there's probably something going on here. And Roman forts were built to such specific specifications, easy for me to say, that we often work out what type of a fort it was because they were all built similarly. So we can almost date them or determine the size of the fort, how many men would have been there. All this information simply by a photo taken from above. It's fascinating. Anyway, there are two more forts that I want to get to that are quite different from these. So let's do that. Still with me? Thank you very much for not scrolling. I will reward you with two fortlets, and I don't often do that, especially on a Friday. One of them, by the way, is in Devon. I apologise for that, and I'll come to that in a moment. But let's start with the one that's in Somerset, Old Barrow. Old Barrow dates from the early invasion period, and it was there on the coast largely to monitor coastal traffic. And it was also occupied by auxiliaries from Legio to Augusta, the Second Augustan Legion. And finally to Martinhoe, which I know is in Devon. However, I think it links or may link to Old Barrow, because though it was only occupied between AD 55 and 75, it was a signal station. They found evidence that this was a signal station, which suggests perhaps that this was able to send signals to Old Barrow, presumably fire signals, who then might be able to action anything that had been seen or observed by what was going on around Martinhoe. So there we go. Thanks again for the question. And if you've got anywhere you'd like me to look into, stick it in the comments. And thanks for sticking around this long.